some of these shifts and challenges factoring into your overall talent acquisition strategy? I mean, this question, it can go to any one of you that would like to jump in. Maybe Alan, I mean, you've been able to really wonderfully articulate some of the some of the challenges that you're facing as a global enterprise. How do these sort of seismic shifts fit into your talent acquisition strategy?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, I'll call it offense, and one defense. On the offense side, clearly work from home has increased the applicant pool. We work very early on. We have a RPO relationship with a major provider, and we work with them very quickly in terms of we no longer had the constraints of, hey, you got to be willing to come to live in Silicon Valley and spend gazillion dollars just to buy a little apartment and blah blah blah. So that has opened up a number of talent pools, which, by the way, has been very good with respect to us driving greater inclusion and diversity with respect to representation and also kind of mindset. So that's worked well. So that's kind of the offensive part. The defensive part is, and it goes back to the subtlety of not being at work. We've been picked off. This is a very competitive environment that we're in, particularly in some of our areas of software engineering and things along those lines. And it's harder to kind of figure out if somebody's unhappy or dissatisfied when you're not with them, that frequently. And there may be an informal opportunity for them to either surface a concern or for you to recognize that perhaps they're not kind of really too satisfied. So we've gone in from a talent perspective and frankly doubled down on a number of our top performers, whether it's with equity, with cash retention, things along these lines. While our turnover has plummeted, and it was already very low for tech firms, very low, the fact is the top talent still is in great demand. And I will say a number of our leaders have gotten surprised, even with some of these efforts, where they thought Alan was really happy and suddenly he calls up and boom, he's gone to one of our competitors. That hasn't stopped. So we got to continue to be vigilant about that.
Okay, good. Skip?
Well, one of the things I didn't anticipate was the large number. I mean, first of all, you have to understand the composition of our workforce. We're a New York City headquartered company. All of our offices are in large metropolitan areas around the world. Our workforce is predominantly late 20s, early 30s, so they have a lot more geographic flexibility than would a workforce that's predominantly made up of those that have dual career considerations, settled in one place, homeowner, prevalent home ownership, et cetera, children in school. So we saw, particularly in the early months, a lot of geographic dislocation of our employees. And now what we're seeing is, even though we have a large number of employees who love the company, that are rethinking where they want to be longer term. Anyone who's been in a large metropolitan area or a place like New York know the quality of life compromises that you make to live in a city like that. And it's been, there's sort of like another wave of impact that the more extended version of work from home is having, or virtualized work is having. But to Alan's point, it's also an opportunity. We were thinking differently about talent pools and where in fact work has to take place, and how much of it needs to be office-based. And we very much passionately believe that a lot of our work processes require high levels of collaboration, but that collaboration doesn't have to presuppose co-location. But all of the processes that we went into the work from home period, assuming that people were going to be in an office, all had to be virtualized. And so to your question about talent acquisition, I mean, we have now, 6 months into this, a large number of because we're a pretty rapid growth company, we have a large number of employees who have never been in the X office, who have never been co-located with a colleague, who have literally been sourced, recruited, selected, onboarded, trained, and now are working without having ever without having ever been in as part of a YEX team in the traditional way in which we would think about it. So early on, obviously, we had to enable our capacity to do all those things effectively, and that now I think we're in the process now of optimizing all those experiences and paying attention to how do you drive a high quality of employee experience in a virtualized way.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's move the conversation a little bit on to the most important element in any organization, and that is, of course, the people. And there has been so very much to navigate through. Maybe, Alan, starting with you, and a question for all, between all the circumstances that we've been describing, what have been your top 3 priorities in these past COVID months? And looking forward, how will they evolve?
Yeah, we've actually touched all 3, so I'll just hit them briefly. The first one is, lack of a better phrase, behavioral health support, and that continues. As I mentioned, what's the next wave here? What else we need to do? And I won't belabor all the things that we have done. I did mention also workplace of the future. How are we going to manage this remote place? And in particular, we too are seeing that new generation of employee that has never been co-located with any HPE employee. They've come on board, and we're just trying to figure it out. And frankly, we haven't figured it out yet. It's a bit anecdotal how we're working it. And then the third priority, and not by any means in order, is frankly I would almost say a self-indictment around inclusion and diversity. HPE has always been known as a very progressive employer. Frankly, we published, not that that's in the whole agenda, but we published our representation statistics for years, well before other folks done. We've worked pay equity for years and made those investments. And, we kind of like to say, oh, gee, we're like a little bit better than those folks down the street. Well, that clearly isn't good enough. And I would say, particularly within the HR function, the sadness and anger that emerged over the last several weeks and months has been, both obviously very disappointing to me professionally, but also very motivating, I think, to our senior team to say, what do we really need to do there to be not just advocates, to be anti-racist, to be much more progressive in this area. And it's not good enough to be better than someone else who's average in a society that has been, abysmal with respect to this whole topic. So that is one that I would also say, we've got a lot of ideas, we got a lot of things we're doing, but it's one that we're spending a lot of time on.
Thank you. Thank you. Patricia, what have been your top priorities?
Well, of course, repeating what Alan said, but one of the things around employees is the recognition, I think, inside themselves is that there are a lot more opportunities for them. And the mental barriers they may have been putting up for themselves, location, or the friendships that I had at work. I've been at home now for 6 months and I seem to be fine. So maybe I can look somewhere else. And so I think those sort of conversations and re-engaging people are critical. I think also around the building sort of that racial equity conversation is really building the personal strength, building that muscle to have those hard conversations. And it takes a lot of courage. And it takes a lot of vulnerability to be able to have those conversations as leaders. And then I'm seeing leaders step into that they're saying, I don't want to just make the statement. I don't just want to, do the performative actions, but I want to grow as a human being. And recognizing that in and of itself attracts people and makes people want to stay. With the conversations that we've been having here and at my prior job, what you hear is employees saying, I'm so appreciative that I can work in a place where we can have these conversations. Because we know they're not happening at home, and they didn't happen in the workplace. Now you hear the word white supremacy every 3 or 4 seconds on TV. So people are beginning to build their competence and their confidence, knowing that they don't have to be perfect to have this conversation, that I'm not going to depend on Black people or Latinx people to educate me, that I'm going to do this and build myself and take the personal responsibility. And I think that's wonderful.
Good. Excellent. Maya, tell us a little bit about in your consultancy and even in your tenure previously Tribune and other organizations, how have you helped to drive actually and accelerate a culture of trust, engagement, transparency?
So great question. So, and no matter the organization, no matter the culture, no matter where they are in this journey, there are some basics that I have deployed every place that I have worked, as well as any company that I have consulted with. So communication is at the top of the list of strategic priorities when you are focused on employee engagement, because employees just want to be informed. And they want to understand why. And of course, there will be times where it's not appropriate to explain why, but there are many, many opportunities where, decisions are made and employees don't understand why. And if the company had just communicated the why, the delivery of the message and the receiving of the message would have been, so much better. So regular updates around the business, where the business is both, operationally, financially, where the business is related to the goals and objectives. Just what I promote is transparent leadership and being as transparent as possible and sharing information with your employees, because that's how you engage them and keep them informed and interested, is that they understand what is going on in the business. And then what is also important is education, and education in the sense of learning and development and investing in your employees, and then education specifically around DEI. What has been going on across the country and across the world, we are at a time that I have never experienced in my entire lifetime. I have been doing diversity work for probably 15 years. I became certified to deliver diversity education like 12 years ago. And I have never seen the amount of interest and investment in DEI that we are seeing now across the country. And most of my clients are companies who have historically done nothing in this space. They have literally are starting the journey for the first time as a result of all of the social unrest. And so it has been a huge step in engagement and in building trust, that the company is now saying for the first time, we care about you. We care about our BIPOC employees. We care about our Black employees. We stand in solidarity, but we also have to demonstrate action to explain and demonstrate what does that mean. So, there was hundreds, thousands of statements across the country about we stand with our Black employees and we stand in solidarity, but people were challenged, employees challenged companies. What does that mean? And how is this going to show up in the boardroom, in the leadership team, in representation across management, and ensuring that there is not only representation, but also equity, both pay equity, gender equity, and so it's just been a fascinating time to help companies build this trust, make, as I call it, make deposits to the trust bank, one action at a time.